You know, if you were a part of that chick group that got up at midnight and then started to party, and you didn't want to go to bed at 8 in the morning, you want to go to bed at 10, 11 in the morning. You know, so you went to these after-hours clubs and...
Unfortunately, people are going to find a way to party.
South Beach is about nightlife.
Miami was full of after hours.
People are going to find a way to party.
It's like all this little space open like late in the morning, and I used to go to a lot of them because I was going out a lot back then, and but I like the after-hour experience, the after-hour atmosphere and everything.
My father and I had a place called Sammy's East Side that was kind of famous, infamous in the, I guess they're calling it the cocaine cowboy era now. We had the only 24-hour liquor license in Dade County. You didn't know somebody, you couldn't get in, so it had a kind of a unique atmosphere. My father had connections on the city of Miami Beach, and the city of Miami Beach at that time was open to suggestion for new ideas. It was decorated beautiful inside, outside, no windows, no clocks. You couldn't tell what time it was. You had to be a member. It was a very strict door policy. Bottom line is we had all the heavies in those days that were in town. As I got to the middle of the bar one night, and I looked to the left, place was packed, and I saw all these heavy-duty New York Italian guys. Everybody was wearing sport coats in those days. And on the right, I look, and I see all these heavy-duty guys from Colombia. And in those days, everybody's pointing, give him a drink, give him a drink, give him a drink, and everybody's, full macho. I said, how am I going to survive this? So I looked around, and I threw my hands over my head and my mind, and I said, Switzerland. I said, that's the way I'm going to survive this, because when trouble came up, one night there was a guy who came to the front door. We wouldn't let him in, and we kept telling him, you can't come in, and we looked down, and we noticed looked like he was carrying like a pistol in his waistband. I'm looking through the window. We had like one of those speakeasy slots, and the sun was coming up. And guys wanted to go home, and I had these heavy guys in there, and I said, "You can't. It's not a good time to go." So they're upset. They're restless. So I come up with a plan. I send my doorman out the side door with a baseball bat, and I talk to the guy through the other door. I distract him, and he hits the guy on the back a little bit and knocks him. Then we open the door and we take the gun away from the guy. And as I open the door and we take the gun away from the guy, the big Italian guys, big beefy Italian guys, come storming out in their sport coats. And they start hoofing the guy, just like in the movies on the sidewalk. They're so pissed off that he's been holding them up for 20 minutes. I jump on top of the guy practically. I tell him, it's enough, let him go. So I guess they had enough. They run to their Cadillacs and they take off. It's like the sun's just coming up, and this guy's laying on the sidewalk, and oh my God, they leave him with me, and I think he's going to die for sure. So I bring my car around from the back, and I throw him in the back seat. I think I'll take him to the hospital and get him out of there. And he's laying in the back seat, his head's all puffed up, he's got blood coming out of his mouth. And I get about halfway to St. Francis Hospital, and I hear, I said, oh my God, that's great, he's alive. I said, you all right? And he says, how much is the membership? So I knew I had a winner right there. I knew I had a winner.
Club knew we had the only 24-hour liquor license in Miami Beach. And back then, the city fathers were in support of what we were doing. We could go to the city fathers and give them a proposal, say, there's a big after-hours movement going on here. At 5 o'clock in the morning, all these after-hour illegal clubs are opening up all over the place. And it made sense, so we wrote a law that only fit Club News property, certain size property, so many feet away from a school, certain size dance floor, had to have a restaurant. So we wrote a law that only fit Club New to allow for a 24-hour supper club.
The city didn't have an ordinance against a bottle club, so they had to write an ordinance to outlaw what we were doing.
But the city fathers are the ones who endorsed the law to allow it to happen. And, we had everybody in one spot, and the city was making the taxes from it. The police could monitor what was going on. Well, eventually, who's out at 8 o'clock in the morning? You got bartenders, you got drug dealers, and undercover cops.
I mean, I remember Sophie Delaplane did a thing called the Egg House, a couple of blocks further back by the radio tower.
Andrew Delaplane one night took over a place called the Egg House, which was an abandoned produce warehouse on 1st Street.
We had all these bartenders and people leaving around 4 in the morning. She couldn't stand the fact that all this money was walking out the door, so she said, okay, let's open an after-hours club.
And his goal was to provide a place after hours to continue to consume alcohol.
So she found this egg house. It was an actual working egg house with the conveyor belts and everything.
That rolled the eggs.
Literally, she did nothing. She knocked out a few walls. We got up there with sledgehammers. She did nothing. She just kept the freezers on. So you went to the freezer room to do I don't know what.
The coolers.
They were the
where eggs
VIP
were kept.
rooms.
People were having cocktails in abandoned coolers that had a place where they were cleaning eggs years before.
The
They were kept at 60, and the main room had no air conditioning.
The dance floor.
Yeah, it was 120 degrees in there.
It was completely illegal.
But we didn't have a liquor license.
No.
There were no, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. That was an illegal after hours. There was no liquor license.
Everybody did drugs, but by 5 a.m. they couldn't. I think it was ecstasy at the time. If you drank on ecstasy, you ruined the high. So we sold bottled water, and we opened at 5 a.m. when the other clubs threw them all out.
No, you had to bring your sunglasses. It was so bright when we would open up the big garage doors. It was blinding.
But we didn't have any permits. But Renee was friends with the building
we not
department.
name names?
Head of the
Paul
building
Joya?
department, Paul Joya.
Joya.
And the night we opened, the police came and fire trucks came, and all these tough guys get out. And Renee holds up a business card and says, "Here you go, boys. Read the back of this card." Then God turned it over. "Have a good night, lady." And they drove away. So they left us alone.
It was, the normal drill on a nightclub opening. They try and shut you down.
Right.
That we were celebrating at South Point Park.
Right.
We'd all get together and do this big old bash, and it would just be kegs and kegs and just booze everywhere and barbecue, and we were just one big close family. We'd go down to AJ's place down on 3rd Street, where the junkyard.
Well, they took over the space from Andrew, and it still didn't have any, so to speak, licenses.
Yeah, then you had the junkyard down below 5th Street, which was run with one of the old guys from Flock of Seagulls, AJ.
Kyle Duval and AJ Mazzetti. Kyle was a bartender who'd been bartending in numerous places, and AJ was one who had built most of the places that were around and was trusted by many to have a good heart and a strong work ethic and a strong back.
AJ was, beside being one of the best lighting techs who ever worked for me, and one of the nicest guys I've ever known, AJ was a musician and was in a band. And AJ started playing, he ended up playing with a Flock of Seagulls for a while.
And a lot of the guys lived in the club, and it was like one of those underground clubs that was just the coolest shit because, you go down there and you could actually hear all the rock and roll bands. But it was back in the days when the zoning people weren't all over you. It was actually an old warehouse that probably should have been condemned.
And they came to me and they were like, and I was at Semper's at the time, and they came to me and said, well, we want to do this after hours, and we have the lease. We got the lease all done. Jerry gave us our lease, and what do we have to do to make this legal? And we started to look into it, and we found an old dance hall license that permitted them to sell sodas and have people dance. And there was no time limit. It had been the same Diamond Dance license that was at the Warsaw Ballroom when it was Hoffman's Cafeteria in the early 40s. And with that license, we were able to open up after hours as well. There were no liquor license, but we called it a bottle club back then.
And that's at that point, Miami Beach was just all about attracting people and attracting attention in order to get more people to come back. So as an underground club, that was probably one of my favorites. The Junkyard was definitely a very cool place.
Oh, we'd have these crazy after parties at my house where we all just sit there and just get whacked.
You could run after hours clubs and the cops would watch your back and warn you if the good cops were coming, so to speak.
Nice. We did everything we could. Marilyn Manson started there. We had the Mavericks back then. Napalm Death played there. It was a room that set the standards, or the ability for Pump and then later on the Mix, which were two successful after hours that kind of, led to the city really kind of seeing the bad side of what happens at night.
Don't ever forget the Mix. The illegal after hours club that ran probably from, 98 till 2001 or 2.
The way the Mix came about, I was dating a girl that I met, and we ended up hanging out on South Beach. This was probably 96, 97. Her brother was Greg, who was one of the promoters for Neva. And we used to hang out in all the spots, South Beach, during that time. Go to Hombre, go to Paragon, go to all the after hours, everything. We used to go do all that. And Greg got a partnership with this guy Elcho from Holland. They actually, in 97, they did the actual first Mix party at Salvation. It was the first ever event. It was during Winter Music Conference in 97.
The idea of the Mix started was on Halloween of 1997. I was with Eljo, the owner, and Greg, who became the owner of the Mix. We were looking for Halloween outfits, and we go in this store on Washington and 14th. It was actually full of Halloween costumes. We were walking around, and Eljo and Greg go, "Look at this space. Imagine it without all these Halloween costumes hanging out." It was a temporary Halloween store. We go in the side room, back in the back. He's like, there's the DJ booth. Like these two guys look at this Halloween store and they just start envisioning a nightclub in there. Looking at them thinking, "You're crazy. What? We're just buying Halloween costumes. What do you got?" "No, we're gonna make an after hours." I'm like, "But there's no after hours allowed on the beach. Like they always raid them and close them, and we're not gonna serve alcohol." "What do you mean you're not gonna serve alcohol? Who's gonna come? Why would people come to an after hours and not continue to party and drink?" "No, it's gonna be all about the music." Really? Okay. They found the land. The Halloween place moved out from October 31st to January 1st, which was only 2 months. They worked night and day, and they built a club inside this Halloween store and turned it into Mix After Hours.
They decided to get together and look into that spot and open up the Mix. And this was right before January 1st, 1990. They were building the place to New Year's Eve, to build it to have it open for New Year's Eve after party, which is January 1st, 1998.
I mean, that was crazy. That was right, block and a half from us, and we closed Liquid, Shadow, and Crowbar would close down and go to the Mix, and that was one of the craziest. I mean, space looks like a Greyhound bus station compared to the Mix.
But it wasn't anything different than what was already existing, except for the lack of alcohol. You would go to Hombre, which was a gay club, you find straight people, all different kinds of people, all mixed up in there. They didn't care, they just wanted to hang out. So we were kind of the same thing. We had people from the living room, people from Shadow Lounge, people from Liquid, from all different types of music, all different types of genre people. They would all show up at the Mix.
I didn't really know if anyone would come. I worked in the little VIP section. Eljo and Greg were at the front at the door. David was in the DJ booth. Liquid was big back then. We were hoping we would get the crowd coming out of Liquid at the end of the night, and it just took off. I just remember standing at the door, and it seemed like 1,000 people just came from Shadow Lounge and Liquid, and they would just come to the front door, and we were like $20 each, come in. There's no alcohol, nobody cared. They just wanted to dance. We had all the drag queens, all the performers, Power, Paloma, all of them came there, and they really just set the flavor. There was no snobbery in there. I didn't feel there was any. It was all about the music, and everyone was cool. It was amazing time. Since it was all about the music, and Eljo, the owner, was from Amsterdam, Holland, and he really wanted to take the musical direction of the Mix a little bit different. Liquid was New York house, living room was like Euro pop music, and so Eljo was going to Europe all the time. And
then the owners went to Holland, and when they came back with like a stock of records.
He was going in the record stores, and he would listen to music, and he would bring back David Padilla like 40 or 50 actual 12-inch records music coming from Europe that people hadn't heard here yet.
And hand them to David and go, this is the kind of music we want you to play. And it was trance.
The musical direction of the mix really was, Elder would say, I'm educating the beach on this new, I don't know, trance, you know, a little different sound.
David got the records, listened to them, and took it to another level. Seriously, like went from, oh, I can do this, to watch me do this. And he created an incredible trance energy that was first time I've ever felt something like that. I mean, me working at the bar, walking up and down, doing what I have to do, sometimes I had to stop and just sit there and enjoy what he was playing.
He was the first one to book Tiesto.
Before anybody knew who he was, the first time he ever appeared in the United States was during Winter Music Conference 1999. We had Tiesto at the mix.
Paul Oakenfold played there.
1998 Winter Music Conference, we had Paul Oakenfold at the mix. You know, there was a lot of big people that are now icons, are huge in the scene, but back then they were just, you know, starting off.
DJs that became huge after that you would never think would play a 500, 600 person club. They would ask El Joe's reputation was, the sound system was amazing, the crowd was amazing, and he said they would call and ask these big DJs, can we come and play for music conference there? Yeah, of course. So it really developed around the music, the sound. You weren't really hearing that sound at Salvation, at Liquid, at Living Room, at the other places.
We were legal, we were a juice bar, we could open 24 hours at the time if we wanted to. And basically what makes us stood out is we were actually built like a club. We had an incredible sound system designed by David Padilla, who was the resident DJ. The lighting was intense, and everything was set up just like a club, minus the alcohol.
The mix was out of control, and dark, and loud, you know. And again, it was music heads. It wasn't, you know, people weren't going there just to get high or, you know, whatever. It was music heads. David Padilla. I mean, that kid, I still have so much respect for him as a DJ.
They found David Padilla at Warsaw. They asked him to come over and be the resident, do the sound system, set up everything from the beginning.
So when they went and heard him and they saw that he was playing, they thought that was the guy they wanted. So they brought him over to the mix. When the mix first opened, he brought the people from Warsaw. It looked predominantly like we were going to be a gay bar, because it was just all the gay people coming in until the heteros found out. Then it became, you know, very mixed. But at that point, David was actually spinning house music like he did at Warsaw. Great music, but too, by the way, it was pretty awesome.
He did the sound system at Liquid. He basically built, he said, the same sound system. I remember him saying, the same power, the same wattage as Liquid in this little room. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Because he would just blow that room up. Just destroy that room, you know? It's just, I love that kid.
I think about the mix a lot. I mean, then again, going back to David Padilla, I mean, isn't that funny that David Padilla got me into music with Work It to the Bone by L&R in Warsaw. With a system that he made all the speakers. And then he made the mix after hours.
And David designed that DJ booth, designed the sound system, designed the clubbing. He was the first resident DJ of the mix. He opened it up opening night.
You know, I mean, I like that kind of thing. I like guys who are so dedicated to the music that they build the system themselves. You know, I mean, those people have a lot to do with Miami.
When we first opened the mix, we had one way in and one way out. And you would come in, you pay your money, and then you get patted down. Checking for weapons and drugs. We were probably the first club in South Beach to be offering everybody got patted down. My policy was if you were caught using them, you get kicked out. If you got caught selling them, we send you to the cops.
I don't recall them being a big crime problem for us, though. I mean, in the sense of a lot of problems occurring in those places. It was more in the regular clubs where alcohol was being served.
We didn't want to be responsible and get the pointed finger, oh, you're allowing people to sell drugs in your club. That's what we didn't want to do. But if you're using a drug, we didn't think that you needed to go to jail for it. We just kicked you out, go home for the day and come back another day.
My experience with dealing with the clubs as a narcotics detective was very good. The bartenders, the owners, they would call us all the time and say, hey, this guy's out of control, he's selling, it's not good for business, it's not good for them, and it's not good for the city.
And the propensity for alcohol and testosterone coming together with, you know, a lot of other things that led to fights and altercations that the police had to deal with.
From the get-go, we hired 2 off-duty officers every night. That we
And they
were
stayed
open.
at the door?
They stayed in actually in the swale in the middle of the street.
People are going to find a way to party.
In 1998 was a really big year for a lot of things that happened. Then it just started getting at a bigger scale. Because already in 99, we were already hearing, people were already telling us, well, you watch out, they're gonna wanna shut you down, they're not happy with this going on. I mean, we even took measures to, before the shit hit the proverbial fan with the city, like, remember we used to just let people in and out whenever we wanted. And there's people fucked up on passing out on top of cars or something, and that's what got the bad reputation. So we decided to clean it up. We stopped doing re-entries.
Because of all the G.
Because of the G and the blue. Oh man, the stories about the blue nitro and the G were, I remember nights that people would, I don't know, like 6 people would on that shit, and we had to call rescue. Yeah, I mean, 3 hours later they wake up and they're fine. In the hospital, they wake up and everything's fine, they get out, but still, you know, if people have been drinking and do that shit, you could kill you. So, but yeah, there was some definitely scary moments. But we were trying to make it, you know, make it look cleaner. Like we stopped doing re-entry at the mix, and then instead of having exit out the front, we started doing exit
out the alley.
Exit the alley.
I remember that.
You had to come. You came into the front, and the front looked nice and clean. But when you wanted to leave, you had to leave out the back.
Yeah.
So if you looked like shit, nobody saw you walking out of our club looking like
the
shit.
walk of shame was in the alley.
Yeah. Exactly. The walk of shame was not in the front door; it was in the alley.
Mouth, we would go to the after hours. And
Everybody
stuff
would
like
know
that.
the after hours.
And then you would do the proverbial walk of shame at 12 noon. I'd be in leather pants and a t-shirt. I'd be like, shit, it's 12 noon. It's 85 degrees outside. I'd have to hit the alleyway. I wouldn't even take a cab.
No,
I'm
you end up at Dave's and have a nice sandwich. Some coffee, Cuban coffee.
People would stay until, 11, 12 in the afternoon, literally. We would stay open until the 10 more people were on the dance floor.
Then all this after hour were cut off. There's no more after hour in Miami Beach. The only place right now is Space. But I think that was something that was very, very typical of Miami Beach.
To be frank with you, I was a bit mixed on the mix at first. Wasn't so pumped up on Pump and a little catty about Kit Kat. But I have to tell you, I went there, I looked at the clubs. I know my colleagues have visited as well. I spoke to the chief of police, spoke to Mel Slesser, spoke to residents. I happen to live in the neighborhood where some of these clubs are. I spoke to my neighbors. I personally do not see these clubs different than any other clubs. I don't think that we should be distinguishing them as such. As far as the public safety issues, I do not see whatever is going on there different than what's going on in other places of the city. And frankly, I would propose to just let them be as they are currently. I don't see a compelling governmental interest to get involved in the businesses of these people. So that's what I...
Well, eventually the state created laws for bottle clubs because we were breaking rules. The city would hit us up with every citation possible to close us down because we were south of 5th Street, which was supposed to be really quiet, and they didn't want noise down here. Ted's Hideaway was down the street. There was no Big Pink back then. It was just us making noise in this produce warehouse.
We got to the point where we were moralizing quite a bit about good and bad, the drugs, this, that, and the other.
drugs are all over this city. There is no doubt, whether it's a restaurant, a nightclub, on the beach, or when you even walk along Ocean Drive, folks are smoking pot. It's all over the place. So that really becomes a separate issue, and we have to treat the drug issue differently, and we'll deal with it as the police department may find best. Our distinctive nature here is our nightlife. I mean, it was about the Art Deco district. I think that revamped, it brought everything to a fore, and it's been evolving. This is an evolving city, and right now our restaurants, nightclubs, including after hours, are what makes us special. And we have to be careful as to how we treat that, because it is delicate. And I'm not going to say it's going to disappear overnight, but you start chipping away at, I believe it was David Wallach who says you start chipping away until you hit an important vein, and then you'll just bleed to death.
People have come to revere this city for many more things than its nightlife. It has a lot more beauty than its nightlife. But if this commission feels that we need to have after-hours clubs, far from me to be the party pooper.
Okay, this has been like a law school examination.
I gotta say, the stress with the city was bad. Little politics and bullshit we have to deal with. But one of the most memorable times in my life was being on South Beach doing that at that time. The mix closed because, one, the city made it hard for us to operate, only letting us open from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, we had to kick everybody out. And at the same time, Club Space had just opened in downtown, and they were using charter buses to pick people up and take them over there. They had a 24-hour liquor license and full liquor.
Yeah.
So we were chopped off at the legs at both,
And when did Kit Kat and Fabric and Pump close?
They closed after. We were the first ones. We were the first ones to just say, that's it.